Hello everybody, it's me, Mrs. Kokenauer. This week I'm reading fairy tales and folk tales to you guys. And I want to remind you of different things that happen in fairy tales and folk tales. Fairy tales and folk tales have usually been handed down for hundreds of years to where we don't even know necessarily who wrote the first version. Different authors and illustrators can put their own version together and make a new one for us to read, and they're a lot of fun to read. I think you'll like fairy tales and folk tales. They usually have good guys and bad guys in them that are pretty easy to recognize. Fairy tales and folk tales usually have a happy ending. I love the happy ending. The characters usually learn a lesson in the fairy tale and folk tale, and so by reading it we can learn the lesson too. So I want you to be thinking of what that lesson is as we read this one together. And sometimes there's magic happening in the fairy tale. Today I'm reading to you Mufaro's Beautiful Daughters, an African folktale. Now thank you to Scholastic Press for giving us permission to read this book together. They're wonderful at Scholastic. The author and illustrator of Mufaro's Beautiful Daughters is John Steptoe. I think you're going to enjoy this. This book won a Caldecott Honor Book Medal, which means John Steptoe, the illustrator, won an award for having great illustrations. And I do love the illustrations in this book. I think you will too. Mufaro's Beautiful Daughters. A long time ago, in a certain place in Africa, a small village lay across a river and half a day's journey from a city where a great king lived. A man named Mufaro lived in this village with his two daughters, who were called Manyara and Nyasha. Everyone agreed that Manyara and Nyasha were very beautiful. Manyara was almost always in a bad temper. She teased her sister whenever their father's back was turned. And she had been heard to say, "Someday, Nyasha, I will be a queen, and you will be a servant in my household." "If that should come to pass," Nyasha responded, "I will be pleased to serve you. But why do you say such things? You are clever and strong and beautiful. Why are you so unhappy?" And that's very interesting. She is beautiful and strong and clever. She doesn't need to be so unkind to her sister. "Because everyone talks about how kind you are, and they praise everything you do," Manyara replied. "I'm certain that Father loves you best, but when I am a queen, everyone will know that your silly kindness is only weakness." So she's jealous of her sister, because she thinks everyone loves her sister for being so kind. I wish Manyara would realize that maybe if she was kind, people would think that same way about her. Nyasha was sad that Manyara felt this way, but she ignored her sister's words and went about her chores. Nyasha kept a small plot of land on which she grew millet, sunflowers, yams, and vegetables. She always sang as she worked, and some said it was her singing that made her crops more bountiful than anyone else's. Millet is like a grain that they can make into bread and cereal. And you know, this reminds me of another fairy tale of somebody that worked really hard and sang and got along with the animals. Does it remind you of Cinderella? I think Nyasha reminds me of Cinderella. One day, Nyasha noticed a small garden snake resting beneath a yam vine. "Good day, little Nyoka," she called to him. "You are welcome here. You will keep away any creatures who might spoil my vegetables." She bent forward, gave the little snake a loving pat on the head, and then returned to her work. Now see, I would be scared of a snake, but she knows that a snake will eat any of the bugs or pests that are trying to eat her vegetables, and that will keep her garden healthy. From that day on, Nyoka was always at Nyasha's side when she tended her garden. It was said that she sang all the more sweetly when he was there. And she does have a beautiful garden, doesn't she? Mufaro knew nothing of how Manyara treated Nyasha. Nyasha was too considerate of her father's feelings to complain, and Manyara was always careful to behave herself when Mufaro was around. Early one morning, a messenger from the city arrived. The great king wanted a wife. The most worthy and beautiful daughters in the land are invited to appear before the king, and he will choose one to become queen, the messenger proclaimed. Mufaro called Manyara and Nyasha to him. It would be a great honor to have one of you chosen, he said. Prepare yourselves to journey to the city. I will call together all our friends to make a wedding party. We will leave tomorrow as the sun rises. But my father, Manyara said sweetly, it would be painful for either of us to leave you, even to be wife to the king. I know Nyasha would grieve to death if she were parted from you. I am strong. Send me to the city and let poor Nyasha be happy here with you. Mufaro beamed with pride. The king has asked for the most worthy and the most beautiful. No, Manyara, I cannot send you alone. Only a king can choose between two such worthy daughters. Both of you must go. This part also reminds me of Cinderella, where the king wants a wife and wants to see all the worthy and beautiful daughters of the land. And did you notice how Manyara wanted to leave Nyasha out? She tried to trick her father into making her stay home, but he said, no, both of them are going to go. That night, when everyone was asleep, Manyara stole quietly out of the village. She had never been in the forest at night before, and she was frightened, but her greed to be the first to appear before the king drove her on. In her hurry, she almost stumbled over a small boy who suddenly appeared, standing in the path. Please, said the boy, I am hungry. Will you give me something to eat? I have brought only enough for myself, Manyara replied. But please, said the boy, I am so very hungry. Out of my way, boy. Tomorrow I will become your queen. How dare you stand in my path? Okay, so Manyara snuck out of the house in the middle of the night because she wanted to get to the king before anybody else could. She didn't tell anyone she was leaving. And look at this interesting boy. Look how strange his ear looks. And he just appeared out of nowhere. But she would not help him, no matter how much he needed it. She wasn't very nice to him, was she? After traveling for what seemed to be a great distance, Manyara came to a small clearing. There, silhouetted against the moonlight, was an old woman seated on a large stone. The old woman spoke. I will give you some advice, Manyara. Soon after you pass the place where two paths cross, you will see a grove of trees. They will laugh at you. You must not laugh in return. Later, you will meet a man with his head under his arm. You must be polite to him. How do you know my name? How dare you advise your future queen? Stand aside, you ugly old woman, Manyara scolded, and then rushed on her way without looking back. That was not a very nice way of treating someone. Just as the old woman had foretold, Manyara came to a grove of trees, and they did indeed seem to be laughing at her. I must be calm, Manyara thought. I will not be frightened. She looked up at the trees and laughed out loud. Ha ha! I laugh at you, trees, she shouted, and she hurried on. The old woman told her not to laugh at the trees. But Manyara was rude to the woman and didn't follow her directions. It was not yet dawn when Manyara heard the sound of rushing water. The river must be up ahead, she thought. The great city is just on the other side. But there on the rise, she saw a man with his head tucked under his arm. Manyara ran past him without speaking. A queen acknowledges only those who please her, she said to herself. I will be queen. I will be queen, she chanted as she hurried on toward the city. She was not polite to that stranger either. Nyasha woke at the first light of dawn. As she put on her finest garments, which means her finest clothes, she thought how her life might be changed forever beyond this day. I'd much prefer to live here, she admitted to herself. I'd hate to leave this village and never see my father or sing to little Nyoka again. Her thoughts were interrupted by loud shouts and a commotion from the wedding party assembled outside. Manyara was missing. Everyone bustled about, searching and calling for her. When they found her footprints on the path that led to the city, they decided to go on as planned. As the wedding party moved through the forest, brightly plumed birds darted about in the cool green shadows beneath the trees. Though anxious about her sister, Nyasha was soon filled with excitement about all there was to see. They were deep in the forest when she saw the small boy standing by the side of the path. You must be hungry, she said, and handed him a yam she had brought for her lunch. The boy smiled and disappeared as quietly as he had come. Isn't that interesting? Nyasha saw the same little boy that her sister was so rude to, and she didn't even wait for him to ask for anything. She offered him some of her lunch. Later, as they were approaching the place where the two paths crossed, the old woman appeared and silently pointed the way to the city. Nyasha thanked her and gave her a small pouch filled with sunflower seeds. Once again, Nyasha was nice to the strange old woman after her sister had been so rude to her. The sun was high in the sky when the party came to the grove of towering trees. Their uppermost branches seemed to bow down to Nyasha as she passed beneath them. At last, someone announced that they were near their destination. They're almost there. Nyasha ran ahead and topped the rise before the others could catch up with her. She stood transfixed at her first sight of the city. Oh, my father, she called, a great spirit must stand guard here. Just look at what lies before us. I never in all my life dreamed there could be anything so beautiful. Arm in arm, Nyasha and her father descended the hill, crossed the river, and approached the city gate. Just as they entered through the great doors, the air was rent by piercing cries, and Manyara ran wildly out of a chamber at the center of the enclosure. When she saw Nyasha, she fell upon her, sobbing. Do not go to the king, my sister. Oh, please, father, do not let her go, she cried hysterically. There's a great monster there, a snake with 5 heads. He said that he knew all my faults and that I displeased him. He would have swallowed me alive if I had not run. Oh, my sister, please do not go inside that place. It frightened Nyasha to see her sister so upset. But leaving her father to comfort Manyara, she bravely made her way to the chamber and opened the door. She's very brave, isn't she? I wonder what it was that Manyara saw that scared her so bad. On the seat of the great chief's stool lay the little garden snake. Nyasha laughed with relief and joy. Oh, my little friend, she exclaimed. It's such a pleasure to see you, but why are you here? I am the king, Nyoka replied. And there, before Nyasha's eyes, the garden snake changed shape. Look, the snake turned into the king. I am the king. I am also the hungry boy with whom you shared a yam in the forest, and the old woman to whom you made a gift of sunflower seeds. But you know me best as Nyoka. Because I have been all of these, I know you to be the most worthy and most beautiful daughter in the land. It would make me very happy if you would be my wife. Oh, that's so interesting. He had been able to see what kind of person Manyara was and what kind of person Nyasha was all of this time because he could magically turn himself into a little boy, an old woman, and a snake. And so it was that a long time ago, Nyasha agreed to be married. The king's mother and sisters took Nyasha to their house, and the wedding preparations began. The best weavers in the land laid out their finest cloth for her wedding garments. Villagers from all around were invited to the celebration, and a great feast was held. Nyasha prepared the bread for the wedding feast from millet that had been brought from her village. Mufaro proclaimed to all who would hear him that he was the happiest father in all the land, for he was blessed with 2 beautiful and worthy daughters, Nyasha, the queen, and Menyara, a servant in the queen's household. Isn't that interesting? Nyasha did get to marry the king, and Menyara became her servant. Do you think it had a happy ending? I think it did. They lived happily ever after. Who were the good guys and bad guys in this book? Nyasha was definitely the good guy. She was kind to everybody she saw and met. Menyara was definitely the bad guy in this fairy tale. She was mean to her sister. She was sneaky with her father. She was rude to everyone she met, the old lady, the little boy. Was there magic in this fairy tale? There was. The king could turn himself into a snake, into a little boy, into an old woman. That kind of thing can't happen in real life, can it? Do you think there was a lesson to be learned in this fairy tale? I hope Menyara learned a lesson. It's easy to become jealous of people, but instead of being mean to everyone, if Menyara had acted kindly, just like Nyasha did, people would have been nice to her. I hope we can learn that lesson since Menyara did not learn it. Thank you for listening to my story today, boys and girls. I hope you enjoyed Mufaro's Beautiful Daughters and learning more about fairy tales and folk tales. Thank you to Scholastic Press again. We will read another one next time. I miss you. I love you. You're my favorite. I'll see you soon.